Hello everyone. Today I want to talk to you about the history of mining in the Buffalo River Valley of northern Arkansas. The Buffalo River flows through the Ozarks through some beautiful scenery, but it also has some interesting history. There are three main minerals that were mined out of the Buffalo River Valley, and those were potassium nitrate, lead, and zinc. I really want to focus on two of those, potassium nitrate and zinc, because they were the most significant in history. During the Civil War, both sides obviously needed a lot of gunpowder. Gunpowder is made with three main ingredients. It's sulfur, charcoal, and potassium nitrate, which is also called saltpeter. The way saltpeter is formed is when limestone comes into contact with bat guano. And then when water is mixed into that combination, those three things produce a salty type substance, which is potassium nitrate. There are numerous sources of potassium nitrate there were throughout the Confederacy, but primarily it's wherever bats congregate, such as caves and caverns. Now, there were a lot of caves and caverns in Virginia and Tennessee. The problem with those cave networks is they were too close to federal Union lines, so it was too unpredictable and it was insecure. In the Ozarks, however, it was a more secure area, and they could rely on the production of potassium nitrate in the Ozarks better than they could anywhere else. So for the first half of the Civil War, the Buffalo River Valley in northern Arkansas was the primary source of Confederate potassium nitrate. In 1862, the Battle of Pea Ridge was fought in northwest Arkansas, and the Confederates lost that battle. So what it did, it allowed Union forces then to put pressure on Arkansas's potassium nitrate production. And Union cavalry would conduct raids periodically through the Buffalo River Valley. The Union didn't have enough forces to occupy these potassium nitrate sites, so they would raid the sites, destroy what they could, and leave. A few days later, Confederates would come back and reman these operations and start production over again. This went back and forth for quite some time, for several months, until Union forces finally occupied the city of Little Rock. And once that happened, it shut down the movement of potassium nitrate out of the region, and the Confederate forces were forced to move their potassium nitrate mining into Texas. Now, there were several potassium nitrate caves in the Buffalo River Valley. I've spent some time trying to locate one in particular in southern Marion County, just south of Yaleville, and I have some good video footage of that, so let's take a look and see what it looks like. Studying the Buffalo River Valley and the history there and the mining operations that took place there is pretty fascinating, actually. But when you get out to see some of these locations, it's even more fantastic. You really get a chance to see what the natural state is all about. Today, I spent several hours in extreme southern Marion County, which is south of Yaleville, kind of on the north side of the Buffalo River. And I was searching for a cave called Saltpeter Cave. There's actually more than one Saltpeter Cave in the Buffalo River Valley. I have another major saltpeter cave in Searcy County. This one is extreme southern Marion County. It was actually used during the Civil War for the Confederates as part of their mining operation to retrieve potassium nitrate, which is saltpeter. Potassium nitrate is one of three main ingredients in gunpowder. Obviously, the Confederacy needed lots of gunpowder for the Civil War. The Buffalo River Valley was the primary source of Confederate potassium nitrate in the first half of the Civil War. I spent 3 or 4 hours searching for this site today, and I finally found it. And right now, I'm going to take you into the cave for just a little bit, and we'll see what it looks like. Saltpeter Cave today. I spent a lot of time looking in the creek beds in the area, which was actually the wrong location to be looking. And I'm glad I went there because it's absolutely gorgeous anywhere around the Buffalo River Valley. But here is the entryway to Saltpeter Cave. Looks like a great place for a bear to hibernate. And the entrance, it looks small, but it opens up into a large area. You have no problem standing up inside of it. Let's see if I can do this without hitting my head. Potassium nitrate it's interesting how it's formed. It's actually a chemical compound created when limestone comes into contact with bat guano. It creates a chemical reaction which produces the potassium nitrate, and that's what it's a salty looking substance, and that's what gets mined out of the cave floors. This cave goes back probably 100 yards into the mountainside, and I've been all the way back to the back, but I don't have the technical equipment to provide good lighting in the back. So this is the best I'm going to be able to show you Saltpeter Cave. But definitely, if you get a chance, come out and see these things. This is actually inside the cave, approaching the exit way. So we talked about the impact the Buffalo River had on the Civil War, but leading up to and during World War I, it also made a significant impact. As early as 1818, when Mr. Henry Schoolcraft explored the region, it was well documented that there were lead and zinc deposits in the Ozarks, but primarily in the Buffalo River Valley. Lead was mined from the mid-1800s to the late 1800s. By the 1880s, though, zinc became the primary mineral mined out of the Ozarks and the Buffalo River Valley. Zinc is a key ingredient in brass. The Rush Creek area, Rush Creek being a tributary to the Buffalo River, was first mined by a gentleman named John Wolfer, who was the first well-known prospector in the area. In 1891, Mr. Wolfer sold his claim to a gentleman named George Chase out of Fayetteville, Arkansas. And it was Chase that started the Morning Star Mining Company, and that was the largest zinc mining operation in the area from start all the way till the end of the zinc mining period. Other mining companies did enter into the valley, and the valley was organized into something called the Buffalo Mining District. By 1899, there were 2,000 people living in the Rush Creek Valley. And by 1917, there were 5,000 people living in the Rush Creek Valley. Now, to put this in perspective, if you were standing at Rush Landing today, you would be almost an hour drive away from the closest town, which is Yaleville, Arkansas. And Yaleville is barely over 1,000 people in population today. So Rush, at 5,000 people, dwarfed the closest town that we see there today. And if you were standing there in Rush now, you would be surrounded by timber country, beautiful scenery, and there's really nothing there of any development whatsoever. No one lives there. It's truly a ghost town. And it's hard to imagine 5,000 people living in that valley. It's hard to imagine that you had general stores, boarding houses, hotels, livery stables, and all kinds of businesses were developed to support that population. The population grew so fast at times, you would see numerous tent cities scattered around the valley as well. Why do we see all that growth? Primarily because of World War I. Like I said earlier, zinc is a primary ingredient in brass. World War I consumed a lot of brass. Artillery shells were made of brass, bullets were made of brass. High demand for zinc. The zinc market skyrocketed, and there was a lot of money to be made there. Why did the population of Rush eventually decrease? It was because World War I ended. By 1918, the bottom fell out of the zinc market, and there was a huge exodus of people leaving the Rush Valley. The bottom fell out because there was so much zinc already produced on the market, and then the demand dropped tremendously. So basic economic 101, supply and demand, it forced the market to collapse. Now, people continued to live in the Rush Valley for many years after that, but in small quantities. There were people living there in the 1950s, as late as 1960. But today it is definitely a ghost town. Had it not been for the remoteness of the location, the road networks going in and out were in poor shape, transportation costs needed to remove the ore out of the area were very high. And with the market low on zinc, it just wasn't profitable to continue on. So we've visited Rush, and we've done some exploring of the historical sites there. We've walked the hiking trails. We've taken some interesting video. Hello everybody, welcome to Rush, Arkansas. This little creek valley is a tributary to the Buffalo River, which is about a mile away from us right now. And as a reminder, the mining of zinc began in this valley in the 1880s and continued on till just after the First World War. Most of the structures in this valley are not standing anymore. You just simply see house foundations. The ones behind me now were built around the turn of the century, around 1900. The reason why they still have lumber and why they're still actually intact structures is because these were actually used up until the 1950s, early 1960s. One of the buildings behind me now was actually the post office for Rush Valley. We're about to take a little tour of the Rush Valley. We're going to walk some trails, go through the woods, because that's where most of the structures are located, and let's go see what we can find. The first mining claim in the Rush Valley was held by a man named John Wolfer. His intentions were to mine silver out of this valley, and he built this smelter in 1886. And it was only used in 1886 with the initial test for silver, which turned out to be negative. They didn't find enough silver here to justify silver mining operations. So in 1891, he sold his mining claim to a gentleman named George Chase out of Fayetteville, and it was Chase who implemented the mining of the zinc in the valley. And this smelter is located in what's called the Morning Star area. The Morning Star mine was the first large mine in this valley, which we're going to go take a look at here in just a second. Here we have the entrance to one of the Morning Star mine shafts, and as you can see, the National Park Service has it enclosed, so you cannot enter. Although when I was a kid, we used to come out here and explore these mines before they got locked up, and you could crawl through these mine shafts for hours. Probably not the smartest thing we ever did. There are numerous entry points to the Morning Star mine shaft, and this is just one of many. Again, they are all closed off. And you see signs of the old mining operation all over this valley. One of the bigger entries to the Zinc mines in the Rush Valley. Entries to the Morning Star mine all over. By the turn of the century, around the year 1900, mining operations have been taking place in the Rush Valley for almost 20 years. Around the turn of the century, the population in Rush Valley was approximately 2,000 people. Most of the structures were wooden. In 1903, a family moved to the valley with the last name of Hicks. Mr. Lee Hicks moved his family here and opened up the first rock structure, which was a hotel. And the rock structure you're looking at now is the wall surrounding the Lee Hicks Hotel in Rush Valley. The Hicks family became known as one of the more prominent families in Rush, and the hotel became known as the most attractive building in Rush Valley. The Hicks family not only opened the hotel, they also had a general store next door to it, and they had a livery stable. And we're walking into the area which would have been the hotel. As you can see, with most structures in the Rush Valley now, it's grown up with vegetation. It's hard to imagine this valley, which is currently very, very remote, used to have thousands of people living in it. And this hotel had plenty of guests. All the prominent visitors to the Rush Valley would have stayed in this particular hotel. Today, Rush is known simply as a landing on the Buffalo River, where canoeists enter and exit for their canoe trips. Still a very beautiful place, and I'd encourage all of you to rent a canoe, float the river, When you take your canoe out at Rush Landing, allow enough time to explore some of the historical sites that you see there in the valley. I appreciate you watching the video today. Thank you for your time, and until next time.